Hi, I'm Shane with Lawn and Light, and you can see the house in the background that we're about to tackle. Now we're going from beginner in our last video to super expert, okay? This is the next house that we're tackling for you guys, but it's got some jumps and stuff and some dormers, some of those things that we talked about in the last video.
The whole point of this video is how to get from this to this. Stay tuned all the way to the end if you want to learn a whole bunch of stuff about how to make a house look great with Christmas lights.
Now this house is really, really steep. So if you're afraid of nothing, then you can do it. But also you want to be super careful. Either the way that you're going to do a super steep house, either you're going to have experience and be able to do it, but even if you have experience, you want to get some of these. What are these? These are called Cougar Paws, okay? And they help you stick to the roof. This is a foam pad that Velcro's on here. And I was just thinking that Velcro would come off. It won't. We've used these for years and years and years. Very worthwhile investment if you're going to tackle a house that you feel like is too steep for you. If it is really steep, you really need these, or you need to get some harnesses set up. You can just throw ropes over the ridge of the house and tie it onto something and use that as a harness and wrap it around you. Just something to keep you on that roof. We don't want you falling off. But expert level, couple dormers, I'll get out of the way in a second, and we'll talk about how to plan out this job, because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? That's how that goes, right? And what I mean by that is we want to know kind of how the lights are going to go on there before we start putting them up. What's a good map, okay? We want to talk about our map and how we're mapping the lights before we actually put the lights up. You can just start throwing lights on there, but you may mess something up and your map may not work out. So the first tip that I'm going to tell you, when you get to doing ridges, and we're doing all the ridges on the front here, when you start doing ridges, you want to do your ridges first. You want to install your ridges first. Why? Because if you install your gutter lines or your trim first, you're then pulling up lights over those lines to get to your ridges. And what's it going to do? It's either going to hook them and pull them off, or if you happen to lose a strand, which is possible, and they fall down the roof, they're going to take your trim and your gutter lines with them. So we don't want to double work if we can help it. So do your ridges first and then come back and do your trim. Have a good plan. Here we go. Let's get into it. Here's the house.
Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is have a plan of attack. You need to know how you're going to design this house before you just start throwing lights on it, because the level of difficulty of this house is quite high. What we're going to do here is our plan of attack is this is going to be our design, and I'll do different colors here for different lines. So that yellow line will all be one line, and that will be our first line. We'll start that yellow line from this corner right here. Now, the next line, we'll make it green, will be over, up, back down, and out. And notice that we're not doing any gutter lines yet. We'll get to those last for the reasons that were stated at the beginning of this video. This one's going to start right there. The next one that's going up. One thing to mention is that the plug is in the garage here, and so it was going to run out and up to that. So that's going to power all of this, and we're trying to have one continuous line. You never want, you want to make sure that you don't loop. And what looping means is basically you plug one line into another that already has electricity to it. It'll short everything out. So the next line is going to go on top here. And what color are we going to make that? Let's make that one pink. So our next line is going to be this down, and this is continuous, but I'm making it look like it looks from this angle. And then our next line, we'll make it white. There's actually a piece that kind of comes down over here, out and down to there. And this like wraps here and then comes back that way. And then our next line will be, what color are we going to make it? Y'all help me here. Can't do black. That's not going to show up. If we do like whatever color that is. Or how about an orange? We haven't done orange yet. So our next line is going to be these dormers. And this is technically going to be 3 different lines, but we're going to jump from one to the next. So when you take them down, you could actually just pull all these down at the same time. There will be little jumpers here. We're going to get power from here, and there'll be a jumper here. So like here, you'll need inline female on this pink line. You'll need a male. And if you don't know what these terms are, go back to our original video of a basic install. We didn't talk about inlines, but inlines are basically females that you can basically run inline in the middle of a line. And so you plug your male into that, and you would need a male and a female here. A female on the end of this line, and a male on this line. A female on the end of this line, a male on this line. A female on the end of this line, a male on this line. A female on the end of this, a male here, and then a female to end it out. As we start here, if we go back to power, you're going to have your power coming up and a female on the end of this power line, and then a male up, down, over, and then an inline female right here with a male on the green line, up, down, inline female here on the green line, male on the pink line, over and down, and then inline female right here on the pink line. And then the white line would have a male over, down, and then a female here. Because our last line, let's see here, if we go like a cyan color, it'll kind of stand out. Our last line is going to come off of that white line, over, down here, and basically like this, come over, hit these gutters. You're going to have a jumper right here, over, down, and when you take this down, you just leave them together. Down, over, back. I believe there was a jumper right here. I can't remember if there was a gutter there or not. And then back here to finish out. That way it looks totally finished. Now this house is designed like this because it's fully road facing. If you're not sure about how to lay out your lights on what's going to look best, go back to that original beginner video. It talks a lot about finding the face of the house. And when you find the face of the house, is basically like you're standing at the road and looking at what you see from the road. Remember that your eyes are drawn to where the light is and not where the light isn't. Go ahead and hit those buttons at the bottom if this is something that interests you and you want to see more content like this in the future. So when you're actually getting started, if you order with us, you'll know how to measure. Go back to that original video, and you'll know how to order. You'll know how to measure. But when you order, it'll come to you, and the first thing you'll do is lay your line out, like in this video, and go ahead and start putting bulbs and clips in. Now, for a house like this one, you would definitely need some help, and I'll tell you why in a second. But because of it's quite a bit of bulbs, clips, and wire, that's one reason you'll need help. The other reason you'll need help is that you need at least one climber and at least one guy on the ground, also a guy to hold the ladder. That's going to be the same person for the job. The more people you have on the ground, if you're a good climber, then the faster this job will go. So the first part, laying them out, and then when you've laid out and you've got a pretty good amount of bulbs and clips in, plug them in. Two reasons: make sure your plug works, and make sure all your stuff works. It's usually going to work. Everything's going to work fine. Most likely, if anything doesn't work, it's going to be the electrical outlet you plugged into. And if you're working with a plug in the eaves of your house, like up in the eaves of roof line, then a lot of times builders will put a switch on those, and you really never know where that switch is until it comes time to use them. So heads up, go ahead and find out where that switch is if you have one. You can just go plug something into it as a test and see if that thing that you plugged in works. So here we're pulling up enough slack basically to make sure that right side is covered, or where we have enough bulbs where that right side is going to get stretched all the way down. And then continuing to pull the slack across the top ridge so that when we get the right side done, we can start putting across the right ridge. We don't have to worry about this pulling up enough slack for the left ridge here because it's just naturally going to hang over when we get to that point. So we got the slack up there. We're ready to start installing, and we want to make sure to go down this right side first. We're going to leave a couple bulbs extra hanging over. That way we have enough wire to connect, and you never want to be short here, so it's better just to leave a couple, and if you need to cut them, cut them. Also, make sure you don't cut a wire while the lights are on. and then run back up to the top ridge. And this is, we're just clipping on the shingle. It's the ridge cap. If you know anything about roofing, they put different shingles on the ridge cap. So we're clipping on the bottom side of that ridge cap so you can see them. Again, because of the face of this house is directly facing the road. We just want to make sure that people can see, or that you can see, the lights from the road. There are rare instances where you may want to see the lights from both sides of your house. If you entertain a lot and you want to wrap around your entire house, well, if you put the lights right here, you may barely be able to see them from the back side of the house. But most likely you're not going to be able to. So they make clips that basically straddle that ridge cap so that you can see them from both sides. Otherwise, you would have to put 2 strands on that ridge, and you don't want to have to do that double work, and you don't want to spend double the amount of money to hit your top ridges just because you want to see them from the back side. As we work down this left side here, we're going to get down to the bottom, and then to cut these, you just turn the lights off, cut them, and then pull your slack back up to the next area that you're working. So the camera, for some reason, went dead, and you see that you see line number 2 is done. That just came over from that corner up and down, and now we're going to work on that high peak ridge, tying in there. So you would tie an inline female, and then, okay, here's another note. When you're pulling slack up, your ground guy is going to be very vital, so you need to go over this with him or her. When you're pulling that up, the weight of that line is heavy. You see how high I am up there. Okay, we're going to emphasize safety here. You want to stay straddling that top ridge. And in order to do that, you need somebody working with you on the bottom. So when they're feeding the line up to you, they need to be holding that line up high enough so that it's not dragging as much as they can, so that it's not dragging on the roof. You're going to be pulling against them on the top and slowly working your way across that ridge. So just enough. Basically, they're just holding it up, but you have to hold it taut or tight enough so that you can get it over dormers if you're working over dormers or over that gutter line. It's best to try these out on a lower ridge than this for your first time, just to get your feet wet and to get your proverbial sea legs or roof legs underneath you. And you see we plug those in as we're installing. That's really just to help with light, to see what you're doing. Also to make sure you're working, the lights are working as you're putting them up, because the last thing you want to do is get one up and it not working. You can do this during the day. It's harder to see the lights during the day, but you can still turn them on and check them. So right here, I actually had to crawl down to get the lights to go over that dormer right there. And while we were down there, I said we'd go ahead and get them over all the dormers. That gets us in a good spot where we can just pull the line up to the top without having to go back down again. Again, the top ridge there, we're just clipping on the lower side of that ridge cap. And you may have to spread, the ridge caps are typically going to be thicker. You may have to spread your clips out a little bit more to get them in there. It's a little bit more work. And as you can see, our camera glitched again and didn't get the install coming down that tall ridge left side, but that is part of that top ridge line coming down one line. This is on the very left side of the house that you couldn't see from that front view. So we're tying in at that top corner there with the inline female, and then working down, out, and then all the way down.
So we're on the top of this steep roof, and we're about to start working our way down. This is where the shoes are really important to have these Cougar Paws on if you're on a roof this steep. And I don't know if you can really tell, but the best way to do this is that now we have to get our lights. We made it to the corner here, and we have to get our lights going down that peak right there, and that is really steep. So what you want to do, the first thing you want to do is not have tension in your hands as you're putting lights on, right? So some people will leave this strand hanging off and try to pull it to them and put the lights on as they're going down. You don't want to do that. If you can, get your lights on top of the roof Lay them on top of the roof, that way they're not pulling against you. And as you're going down, you want to get your hand, at least one hand right here on this shingle, okay? And you're gonna get on your toes as you're going down and allow the pressure of your shoe to go into the roof where the foam is on the bottom of these Cougar Paws. That's how they're made, to make that foam so you'll stick to the roof. So get there, allow a little pressure to get on the shoes so that you stay stuck to the roof. One hand here at all times while you're clipping with the other hand.
All right, y'all, I wanted to jump in here and explain a little bit more about Cougar Paws and why they're so advantageous to being on a roof. Now, I'll try to get you a discount code directly for the Cougar Paws website, but did not have any luck going that route. So what we're going to do is I'm going to recommend that you go to eBay. If you're only using these things 2 to say 6 times a year, then you don't need to pay for brand new boots unless you just want to. If you want new ones, go to the Cougar Paws website, buy you some new ones. So there's 2 options when it comes to the boots at Cougar Paws. This is the Estimator, and the other option is called a Performer. And the only difference between the Performer and the Estimator is the color. The Performer is a light brown, and the Performer also has a strap that comes across right here, so you can cinch them up a little bit tighter. But what I found over the years is that this one, for me, is quite a bit more comfortable. Now, these boots are not that comfortable, to be honest, especially when they're new. As you break them in, they get a lot better, and these seem to break in a little bit faster and are a little bit more comfortable starting out. So what's the big advantage with a Cougar Paw? Well, it's got this foam piece right here that you can replace. We first started using these about 7 or 8 years ago. Before that, we had used tennis shoes with soft soles, and they work okay, but you will wear out a pair of tennis shoes really quick on a roof, and these are made to hold up. So this foam, let me show you how hard this is to get off of here. I've already pulled it off once, and it's still, as you wear it more, that thing sucks in there more. And that Velcro is serious. Now, these pads, depending on how you use them, will last a little while. But let me show you kind of about the boot itself. This is a pair that we've been wearing for a while, and they need new pads. And the reason that I know is because as the foam, you can see the foam, back here, the foam's above this hard plastic or hard rubber sole. But up here, it's worn down and is even with the hard rubber sole. You don't want that. You really want to replace it right before you get to this point right here. Because if you wear these things down all the way to where the Velcro is, and it wears the Velcro out, that's where you're getting into a safety issue. So make sure that if you order a used pair, when you get them in, you want to check these foam soles that you have. Make sure they're not worn down to the Velcro or the hard rubber sole. And you can order new foam pads on Cougar Paws website. I think they're about $25 a pair. And they are specific to the size Cougar Paws that you have. Now, I wear a size 12 tennis shoe, and I buy size 11 Cougar Paws. They do run a little bit big.
So on our dormers, if you have dormers, I always recommend doing them because it adds so much to your house. It's like it fills in the gap. And most people don't have dormers, but it fills in the gap of what's from the bottom to the top. Now on the dormers themselves, you can decide how you want to do them. It doesn't matter as long as you're putting a little bit of light up there. But you can go, the options are, you can start at the back corner and come out, and then up, down, and back in. You can even go from top peak back into the house. I don't recommend that. If you're especially if you're coming out, up, down, and back in, I do not recommend doing like that top peak right there back into the house. Why? There's so much, when you put a ton of light in one little space, it just looks convoluted. So it's unnecessary to actually do that. So what we're doing is just starting at the corner there and up and back down. That's it on each one, on all 3, up and back down. Just to get that little bit of extra light in the middle of the house. Now, once you get those installed, you're just gonna run a jumper. You can do it from either side on this one, or you could actually come from the top. So we're just gonna, on this one, we're just gonna run a jumper, the lamp cord. We're gonna put an inline female right here where my finger is and jump it to there, or to here. And then we're going to put a female on the end of this socket wire or Christmas wire and run a jumper to here, and then again from here to here. Make sure you never loop your electricity. So don't go from there back into power. You don't need it. Never loop your electricity.
Peaks, you'll see him working on the peak there. On the actual where two peaks come together, that is a delicate process that is discussed in the beginner video as well. So you can go back and watch that anytime to get more information on those peaks. But the thing is, try to get them as straight up and down as possible. That's going to help with your slack and also just make it look super professional. Working out, you know, he's going to finish that dormer, cut, and go to the next dormer. And then each dormer is going to be done, making sure that the peak is lined up and that there's enough bulbs to go on each side. The peak bulb is typically one of the first ones, and then you work your way back. So you'll hit the peak, and then if you count it out, you know, there's going to be 10 bulbs on each side. You would put the 11th bulb on the peak and then work the 10 back down and back into the roof on each dormer. And this is the finished product on the peaks. This is the final product, and I want to go over a few things that make this job look professional and give you the pro tips on how to make it look professional. So you see that we finished it out. We didn't have video of finishing out the gutters, but obviously it is finished out. To finish it out, we started on this left corner here and worked all the way down, around, and back to this right corner. That's an end with a female that is not plugged in. The only one that is plugged in here, and this is okay with LEDs, is this line right here is plugged in. All right, so one thing, like looking at this, things that make this job look professional over a, you know, if you didn't watch this video or you've never done Christmas lights before, is one is spacing. You'll see, like we're looking at these peaks right here, this spacing here, and this spacing here is the same. It's just the camera angle that makes it look different. And this spacing is the same, and this spacing is the same. It is consistent across this entire house. The spacing is consistent. All peaks, here's a peak. You're looking at the top corner. The bulb is at the peak and lined up at the peak, and the next bulb is spaced out. These are 15-inch spacing, so the next bulb is spaced out 15 inches. Same thing here, bulb's close to a peak, spaced out 15 inches. Even at the bottom corner here, we tried to measure it. Sometimes you have to put a little slack every once in a while in some of these so that you get one here. And then our spacing here is good. You make it 15 inches. And then you got bulbs on peaks. This is pretty right here. You got a bulb standing straight up on a peak right there. These are the ones that matter, the ones that are front facing. You got bulbs standing straight up. This is why these dormers, imagine this house without the dormers. It was, you know, maybe an extra hour, 45 minutes to an hour worth of work to do these 3 dormers. But it adds to the job. It's consistent, bright, all the bulbs are the same. There's a bulb for every, you know, a clip for every bulb, which makes it consistent. And one thing like you wouldn't notice that if you're installing this, you would know, but you wouldn't notice by eye, is some of these, like across this top row up here, some of these were harder to clip than others. And some of them, you can't get the clip all the way underneath there. That's okay. You're never going to be able to tell. Like this whole row was, if you looked at it from the very top, you would see that they were a little off. Same thing with this row and this row. And that's ridges, top ridges in general. Now coming down the side ridges, those are all going to be very consistent. Anything like on the side here, anything like on a gutter here, this should be very consistent. Unless a gutter is bent, that's when you'll possibly notice that something is off. Now this is a gutter line right here. This is a gutter line right here. One thing you can't tell from this picture, but it bothered me for a little while, it might bother you, is that the way the clips are, these bulbs on the gutter line, all the way across here, are sticking straight out at you. That's the way that the clips go on. The bulbs like look, the peak of the point of the bulb looks at you. Where these up here, the point of the bulb is looking up, and these here, the point of the bulb is looking, I can't draw this very good, sorry, but the point of the bulb is looking out towards you. You can't really tell. So that's the final product there. This is like on a level of 1 to 10 on installing a house. This is probably like a level 8. It's just very difficult. So be careful. If you're going to do something like this, make sure you get some Cougar Paws. And you need to order those in advance because they're hard to get. And be super, super careful. This is a dangerous job, and it is not worth falling off a roof to do this. So if you're not comfortable doing this, then I advise that you hire a professional in your area.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Shoot us a comment if you have any questions or comments, period. Hit those buttons at the bottom. Like, share, subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. Remember, love God, love others, and let your work reflect that. We'll catch you on the next one.